The kiss wasn't a mistake. It was practiced against the glass wall of a rooftop bar overlooking Austin. I was 2 steps out of the elevator at the Line Hotel on Cesar Chavez, hands still smelling faintly of flux and isopropyl from a rushboard rework, when I saw my boss press my partner into the pane, his palm on the back of her neck like a promise he'd already kept. She kissed him like she knew the choreography. For a moment, the city was a pulsing grid of red taillights, and I was a sound that hadn't been mixed into the track. I'm 33. Ethan Valdez. I live in East Austin, on Canterbury, in a 1-bedroom with a north-facing window where the morning shows up reluctantly. I'm a hardware test engineer at Kerbal Robotics, a 6-year-old startup that makes inspection crawlers for industrial tanks and storm culverts. Our work looks like tiny armored beetles with LiDAR crowns, and my days are voltage rails, thermal runaway charts, and a stack of black Pelican cases labeled with my own label maker, because entropy moves fast when 20 people share a bench. I wear nitrile gloves enough that my fingerprints probably look like an EKG. When I don't want to think, I build mechanical keyboards, aluminum cases, Mil-Max sockets, PBT keycaps, switches tuned with Krytox like I'm whispering to them. Clicks that feel like small truths. My partner was Maeve O'Connor. 30, NICU nurse at St. David's North, pale Irish skin that went pink at the hill of her cheekbones when she laughed. She runs Rantown Lake at dawn and cares for plants like they can overhear your intentions. We met in the usual way. You meet people you think the city handpicked for you. A friend's backyard, hot brisket, a frisbee no one wanted to chase, her telling me my hands looked too clean to be real engineer hands, and then rolling her eyes when I listed my scars like evidence. She moved in last January. The closet space negotiations were cordial and doomed. She kept a paperback in every room. She slept like people who work with babies sleep when the shift finally lets go. The betrayer was Martin Schiller, 46, German by birth, Michigan by PhD, Austin by choice. He could sell ice to people who were already cold and make them thank him for the invoice. He was COO for 3 years, then CEO after a board reshuffle in March. Nobody explained to the engineers because stay focused on delivery is the way startups say, don't ask questions. He wore suits that made the office feel like our solder smoke was some kind of incense for his ambition. He called me Valdez, like he was already making a speech about me in a room I'd never see. He recruited me out of a manufacturing job in Round Rock 2 years ago with the promise of ownership, which meant sweat equity and a phantom stock agreement that glittered under the fluorescent light like a fish you couldn't quite catch. He praised my test rigs, my fixtures, my far-sighted paranoia about failure modes. He also liked to move goalposts. Performance reviews came with compliments you couldn't spend. The first red flag showed up as a favor. Hey, can you run the fatigue test this weekend? It'll save us 10 grand on lab fees. I said yes. The second was a request said like a fact. We're deferring the patent bonus until Series B. The third was invisible until it wasn't. The rooftop bar was Kerbal's "We're so close to Series B, we can smell it" party. Thursday, May 22nd. I remember the date because 2 days earlier I'd shipped a crawler to Prague for a demo, and the DHL clerk had made a joke about robots that actually landed. We were at P6, the bar that's more about angles than drinks, and everyone's name tags were designed by someone who has feelings about fonts. Martin had invited friends of the company, which is code for people with money and people who can text people with money. Maeve came because I asked her to, and because she can make small talk with disciplines that don't believe any other discipline is real. At 9:14 p.m., she said she needed air, and I watched her walk toward the glass and then into Martin's gravity. He angled her like a veteran. The lights on the Congress Avenue Bridge made a runway of bats and bad decisions. The kiss lasted long enough for the city to edit me out. It ended when I cleared my throat, unremarkable as a cough in flu season. They separated in the way people separate when the separation is rehearsal, not surprise. Ethan, Martin said, because he says names like he's placing them on a ledger. Let's not do this here. I looked at Maeve. She had that NICU face on the one nurses keep near machines that warn you about catastrophe in decibels. Calm, almost kind, like it would be unreasonable for me to split in half in public. Not here, she repeated, as if the location mattered to the shape of betrayal. Right now, I said, and walked toward the elevator like gravity had picked a favorite. We drove home in 2 cars. She arrived 4 minutes after me, cheeks blotched now, eyes like a winter that had made a scheduling error. It started in March, she said before I asked, because good liars also like to be good confessors. After your Reno trip, he said you were the only reason the company was shipping anything, and he sounded like he admired you. It changed. How many times, I said, because numbers are the only ritual that makes sense before you move on to locks and lawyers. 4, she said, once at his place at the Independent. Once in his office, once in Dallas at that automation expo after the dinner. Tonight. Plan them? I asked. A long pause on the word, like she was walking around it with a flashlight. 3 of them, she said. He kept saying he could help you. He said you were undervalued and he'd make it right, and I... She faltered, took a breath. I let the idea of your life getting easier feel like justification. Did he ever put money in your hand? I asked. I don't know why that came out. Maybe because money is one of the few honest things in the world, as long as you don't ask it to be something else. No, she said, and then quieter, he never had to. She packed a bag that night. A duffel we bought last fall because we thought the hill country would be a place we went to heal our work. She left it by the door and slept on the couch while I stared at the ceiling and counted backwards from 1,000 by 7s, because it's what I do when panic wants to be productive. Morning came like a rumor. She set the key on the table next to my bowl of hex screws and said, I'll stay at Kayla's for a while. I nodded because any word felt like an apology. Work is bad and good for a broken brain. Bad because you can hide inside it and call that progress. Good because it comes with procedures. I went to the lab, to my bench with the yellow tape rectangle that says Ethan, and opened the drawer where I keep a manila folder titled Legals. I pulled out my employment contract and the Kerbal Robotics Patent Contribution Compensation Policy, printed on cheap paper like the thing it describes isn't meant to survive. Section 3B, eligible inventors shall receive a patent bonus upon filing, 2,500, upon grant, 5,000, and upon integration of patented claim into shipped product. 1 of unit margin for 2 years capped at 50,000. I'd filed 4 patents in 18 months. 1 had been granted in February. My bonus had not hit any account I knew about. I'd asked Martin twice, once in the hall, once in a one-on-one. He'd said, let's align with finance after the round, cash management is oxygen. That sentence is still sticky with the way he said oxygen. At 10:03 a.m., I walked to finance. Finance is a person, not a department, at Kerbal. Her name is Alicia Patel, 37, serious laugh, Excel whisperer. She showed me the ledger for patent bonus Valdez E. 2 entries in March. The first, filing bonus transferred to RSU swap. The second, grant bonus transferred to RSU swap. RSU, restricted stock units, valued at an imagined $3.50 a share. There was also a note in the margin that said, per CEO, convert bonus to equity, employee to sign acknowledgement. I didn't sign anything, I said. Alicia chewed on her bottom lip for a second. Then she checked the doc repository and pulled up a PDF with my name typed at the top, a digital squiggle at the bottom that looked suspiciously confident. The doc was dated March 19th. The IP address logged for the signature was 24. 28. 171-70, not my apartment, a downtown fiber range. He brought us a stack of these, Alicia said, low like the room could hear. Said everyone was aligning for the round. My cheeks did that thing where blood decides to be a referendum. Can you print me this and the audit log? She glanced toward the glass wall that looked into the hall like a fish tank, then hit print. You didn't get this from me, she said, but you did. Back at my bench, I opened a new notebook and wrote the date on the first line. May 23rd. I listed a header, facts, then started a list with numbers because lists can be a raft. 1. Patent policy promises cash. 2. No cash paid. 3. Acknowledgement forged. 4. CEO kissed partner. 5. Partner confirms 4 encounters. 6. Out. At noon, I walked to HR. HR is also a person at Kerbal. His name is Peter Gill, 52, has the beleaguered patience of a high school vice principal who has stopped believing in slogans. I told him the facts. Not the rooftop, not yet. The doc, the IP, the missing cash. The fact that if you move someone's compensation without consent and then fire them later, you're not a startup, you're a case study. Peter went grey around the corners of his mouth. I need to talk to Martin, he said, and it sounded like a threat he wished could be a solution. Document it first, I said. Email yourself. CC compliance. BCC a lawyer you would hire if you were me. He nodded. It's a quiet thing, watching a man remember his spine. I left and went to a law office because some fights need someone who knows which hallway actually leads to the room. I found her on a referral from a guy in my keyboard Discord who beat a non-compete last year. Her name was Priyanka Grady, Irish last name, via marriage, Texas A&M undergrad, UT Law, office on West 6th in a building where the lobby smells like citrus and rich people's shoes. 400 HR, 2,500 retainer, glass of water placed in front of me before I asked. I gave her the binder I started between the rooftop and noon, pages with tabs that said, Finance, Patent, HR, Life. I told her about Maeve, because when you say patent to a lawyer, they want to see how the wallpaper repeats. Patent bonus converted to RSUs without consent, plus sexual relationship with your partner equals leverage, she said, pen tapping her pad in the corner like it was a metronome. There's a story he wants to tell where you're volatile and not a team player and he's the adult in the room. We'll give the board a different story. Constructive fraud, retaliation risk, and a CEO who thinks HR is props. What do we do first? I asked, hands flat on my knees like they were evidence. You send yourself a preservation letter company email, copying Martin and Peter, asking that all materials related to your patents, bonuses, and RSU acknowledgements be preserved. Then you go back to work. Quiet. No gloating, no speeches. You document everything. If he fires you into a net. If he tries to sit you down without a witness, you record in your pocket. She slid a card across the table with a QR code that wandered to a Texas one-party consent explainer. If this becomes a fight, we will like our odds. I left with a folder that felt like a shield and a knot that felt like a promise. That afternoon, Martin called a sync. He sat at the head of the conference table in his suit that brazed the air, and he smiled to the room like a man who has no idea his house is full of gas. He talked about runway, synergies with a German pipeline company, getting to yes. He said IP engine, like it was a car he drove, and custody of capital, like he was a priest. If he felt my stare on him, he performed not feeling it with the exactness of someone who writes code for reactions. After the meeting, he asked me to pop into his office. I popped. I put my phone in my breast pocket, with the screen facing out so the microphone could see what it needed. Valdez, he said, stepping behind his desk, I hear you have questions about the patent bonus alignment. Yeah, I said, those questions are called theft. Language, he said, smiling, it's cash management. The board wanted us to conserve. You'll get more value in equity at the Series B valuation. You forged my consent, I said. That's not management. That's fraud. He tilted his head like he was listening to a child tell a very cute story. You're emotional. It's clouding your business judgment. And you're sleeping with my partner, I said, because the honesty of a fight makes some things cleaner. That one I'm emotional about. The rest is math. For a second, his mouth did a little open-close, like a fish deciding whether to be offended or hungry. I don't know what you think you saw, he said finally. It's all in the binder, I said. You'll get a copy in Discovery if you're lucky. He paced once, twice. This is not the hill you want to die on, Valdez. It's the exact hill, I said, and walked out before the part where men like him used the phrase career-limiting move. The next morning, Friday, May 24th, my badge stopped working. I waited at the glass door like a dog that has followed you everywhere and can't believe you'd make the door a fact. Security let me in because I'm always the guy who brings them donuts when a firmware push keeps them late. On my desk, there was a white envelope folded too precisely to be an accident. Inside, a letter, termination for cause. Bullets, insubordination, creating a hostile work environment, disclosure of confidential information. On the bottom, a lawyer's signature in house name I didn't recognize. The letter was dated that morning, 8:03 a.m. The timestamp on my phone said 8:11 a.m. I walked to HR. Peter looked like a thunderstorm watched a train wreck. They made me, he said. I'm sorry, Ethan. I nodded. We're going to do it this way then, I said softly. Not because I needed to be gentle, but because the room was already loud in my head. By 10 a.m., Priyanka had filed a demand letter to the board chair, a man named Harold Whitby who lives in a limestone palace on Mount Bonnell and thinks venture capital is a synonym for feudalism. The letter's tone was a blade. It laid out the patent policy, the unauthorized RSU conversion, the forged acknowledgement, the IP log. The witness Alicia would do a declaration if it came to it, plus the liaisons with an employee's partner, which even if not illegal, becomes a legal liability when paired with all of the above. It demanded reinstatement or severance, immediate payment of owed cash with interest, neutral reference, and a board investigation by an outside firm. It gave them 48 hours. It copied their outside counsel. It blind copied a reporter at the Austin American-Statesman who covers tech when it bleeds. At 2:17 p.m., Martin texted me from a personal number I don't have anymore. We can still solve this like adults. I turned my phone face down and tightened the stabilizers on a TKL board I'd been building for a guy in Dallas who judges keystrokes like some people judge wine. At 5:40 p.m., Maeve knocked. I opened the door, but not the space. She said she'd told Kayla, told her sister, told her mother in Dublin, cried differently with each. She said Martin had messaged her to say he cared for her deeply, but the timing was wrong and the optics were bad. A sentence that should be printed on tiny cards and handed to women at the door of men like him. She said she had called a therapist. She didn't ask for me to take her back. She asked for me to forgive her for the part where she made my life harder. I told her forgiveness wasn't a door, it was a sequence of small maintenance tasks performed in silence. She cried. I did not. She left. Saturday, I closed my checking at Frost and opened a new one at UFCU, because some risks are another way of saying I trusted a man with a suit. I froze my credit because retaliation likes new addresses. I bought a small safe because paper still makes the world behave. I changed my Lochschlager, again, because reliability beats romance. I took the photos off the walls and put them face down in a drawer because I didn't want my apartment to have to look at me while I did lists. Sunday, I ran the boardwalk on the east side, the concrete hot under my soles, the water like a mirror that didn't owe me an image. I wrote in my notebook, "You are still you. That is inconvenient for the man who wanted you not to be." Monday, the board blinked. The chair's assistant called Priyanka at 9:03 a.m. The board would engage an outside firm to review recent matters. They offered me an interim consulting arrangement, which is startup for "don't talk to anyone while we contain this." Priyanka replied with a paper cut of a sentence, "Our client is not your janitor." She asked for full severance, the entire patent bonus cash plus 8 interest, acceleration of my phantom stock to the extent legal, and a mutual non-disparagement that covered any whisper from Martin's mouth to any ear. She also asked for the report to be shared with me in full. They gulped. They said reasonable. Reasonable is a good word when it's coming from a man who thinks shirts are a personality. In the interim, Martin tried to make the problem me. He had legal send a clawback demand for an expense report from March A284 soldering fume extractor I'd ordered for the lab after the old one died during a 90-degree day when even electrons want to go somewhere slow. He claimed it was personal because it shipped to my apartment when our receiving desk was closed. I sent Priyanka the Amazon invoice, my Slack message to the lab channel the day it arrived. The picture of it installed next to the bench I labeled Ethan. She replied to their lawyer with 2 lines. "This is retaliatory. This is dumb." The lawyer stopped replying for 6 hours, which I assume was time spent searching for a mirror. It got louder before it got better. Martin parked across from my building in a dark grey M4 and pretended to take calls with the kind of hand gestures you only learn in business school classes taught by men who've never been told no. He showed up at the Co-op Makerspace on Springdale at 8:50 p.m. on a Tuesday and asked the front desk if Ethan still built toys here. The kid at the desk called me while doing an impression of a person who'd seen a raccoon enter a church. I told him to ask Martin to leave. He left after trying the smile he practices in reflective glass. I filed a police report for harassment APD incident 2506-774101 and emailed the officer's card to Priyanka and Peter with the subject boundary. The officer, a woman named Lopez who looked like she didn't mind when a day asked too much from her, drove by my block twice a day for a week and waved. It's amazing how much better waving makes a man feel. The positive turn arrived while I was soldering a rotary encoder onto a macro pad for that Dallas guy. A text from a number saved as Luca climbing gym. Italian mother, Texan father, 31, civil engineer who fixes bridges and doesn't let people clap for him. We'd met at Austin Bouldering Project, 2 routes over from the kind of man who says, "Send it," without irony. He asked if I wanted to climb outdoors that Sunday at Reimer's. I told him I would bring snacks but not expectations. He sent a thumbs up and a photo of his dog, Miso, a Shiba with eyebrows that could ruin a career. On the rock, he didn't spot like a savior, he spotted like a person who knows someone else's body is theirs. He asked me more questions about my switches than my sadness. That helped. 2 weeks later, the outside firm's investigator called me to clarify some items. She was a former AUSA named Rhea Castellano, with a voice like she'd put men like Martin back in their chairs for sport. She asked me to walk her through the IP logs, the audit trail, the policy. She was the first person who sounded like she enjoyed being correct more than being in charge. On June 20th, at 10:17 a.m., Priyanka forwarded me a PDF from the board. It was short and bloodless. Following a review by the independent firm Borden Holm, the board has decided to separate from CEO Martin Schiller, effective immediately. HR would make me whole per policy. They offered 6 months' salary, my patent bonuses in full with interest by end of week, and a signed letter saying my separation had been without cause due to organizational changes, the phrase that covers a company's sins like icing. They also asked me to sign a non-disparagement clause with carve-outs for truth under oath and communications with law enforcement. Priyanka negotiated a clause that made them pay my legal fees and a clause that said if someone in the company tried to retroactively rewrite the story, I could read the board report out loud into a megaphone at the corner of 6th and Congress. On June 21st at 3:08 p.m. $67,500 hit my UFCU account, $10,000 of the cash bonus, backdated with $1,200 in interest, and a chunk of severance. I took a screenshot. I printed it. I put it in the legals folder and slid the folder into the safe. I also walked to the keyboard drawer and took out a set of GMK keycaps I'd been saving for no good reason and put them on a board that deserved to be pretty. Maeve texted me that evening. I got a new place. Muller, near the park. The rent is stupid. I'm okay. I told her good. I told her her plants had forgiven her faster than I had, which is me attempting to be funny and failing. She said she was seeing a counselor once a week and her sleep was honest again. We both agreed that telling the truth should be a daily habit, not a season. Martin's last gasp was predictable. An email blast from a Gmail account to a dozen of our suppliers calling me unstable and a thief. He also suggested my patents were assigned incorrectly and that he would be pursuing remedies. Priyanka sent one email back that included all the words you dream of sending a man like him: defamation per se, malice, punitive damages, injunctive relief by Monday or we file Tuesday. He went silent, the way cowards do when the room isn't impressed. It's September now. The heat is a slow insult. In the morning, I ride my bike to the climbing gym and stop on the bridge and watch the rowers knife the water into lines. I do small maintenance tasks in my apartment. I move the couch 4 inches left and feel like I got a new room. I invite Miso over and he patrols my hallway like a union rep. Luca sits on my floor and asks me to pick a switch for his work keyboard. I hand him a silent tactile. He types his name like he believes in it. Sometimes the twist isn't that everything was a plan. Sometimes the twist is that you survived a man's plan to make you small and you came out exactly your size. Last night I opened the safe, took out the legals folder and added one last thing. A copy of the board's letter with a sticky note that says, "You did it right." I put the safe back under the bed and sat on the floor and built a macro pad for myself with 3 keys labeled, with a label maker that has become a friend. Boundary, receipt, sleep. He said I'd regret burning the bridge he built for me, but I'm the one who built a better one.